Hello, everyone. Welcome to Forum Friday. Today we have Mark Florka join us on Forum Fridays to tell us what's going on the forums. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Lynn. Hi, everybody. Another month has gone by so quickly, and
Yeah,
uh,
that's
and we
amazing.
and we keep growing. We keep on growing. We're at over 3,300 members so far in the forum.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's
and
very, very active too.
yes, there's lots of things. It's always takes me a while to find some topics to talk about for this because there's so many to choose from, and you know
Yeah.
and pretty much all or most of them are solved already. There's so much
They look
great positive
delicious. So
membership
let's go
activity.
ahead. Let's
Yeah.
start with the one on leavening acid. Somebody asked, what is leavening acid and what does neutralizing value mean? So,
Yes, so leavening acids are often some of the technical information that's provided is the neutralizing value. There's some manufacturers will also provide an ROR, which is a rate of reaction, which is how quick or how slow it reacts. But most importantly, neutralizing value tells you how much to use. So that for if you have a neutralizing value of 80, that means that it is only going to neutralize about 80% of the 80% of its weight is going to neutralize the baking soda. So you need to use more uh, acid to neutralize the amount of soda. I guess it's a hard way of saying it. So if I have 100 grams of baking soda that I want to neutralize, and I have a zero point 0.8 or an 80 neutralizing value, that means I have to use 125 grams of the leavening acid to fully neutralize the baking soda. So it's always more acid than soda to be able to neutralize it. So that allows you to balance then your leavening system so you don't have an excess of acid or an excess of soda, and you can use different rates of reaction is how you get double acting baking powder, because you have the quick reacting leavening acid up front in the beginning, which will neutralize a certain amount of the baking soda, and then the slow reacting leavening acid later on at the slower rate of reaction, which neutralizes the rest of the baking soda. And that way you can calculate the right amounts.
that's true. And if you have any more questions on that, go to our leavening acid page or neutralizing value page. No, that's more information on
Yep.
Bakerpedia.
Yep. It
Um,
always, as recently I spoke to someone and was talking about things, and where can I look up Bakerpedia? It always comes back to Bakerpedia, doesn't it? Yes, it does.
Sometimes we need to make people remember, right? It's so hard to, just try to tell them, hey, just go there, right?
Yep.
But
Look there
start
first.
there. Start.
Chances are 99% out of 100, you're going to find the answer, right?
Yeah. There is this question on folding artisan dough. This particular baker is improving his artisan bread production line and switching to a spiral. So
Hmm.
they are asking to fold or not to fold.
Yes, yeah.
What is
Um,
the answer?
that that comes down to two things primarily. The number one thing would be hydration. If it's a really high hydration dough, you'll still need to fold after the initial dough development mixing to get that gluten network strength so that you get the nice big open cell structure in the finished bread when it's baked. The other part of that is if you're not adding additional yeast to the formula and relying strictly on like a sourdough prepared yeast, you'll need to do that folding to help get oxygen in and allow the yeast cells to multiply so you get enough yeast in the fermentation so that it finishes the whole proofing process in the bake cycle. Otherwise, you won't have enough yeast and it'll die out. It won't rise properly, right? So the folding depends primarily on how much water you have there and how much yeast you're adding. So if you're adding yeast and you're not going above 75 to 80% hydration, you could probably just run a spiral and do as much folding and bulk development as you want and have time for to develop flavor.
Sorry.
You're getting out some tricks for us? Oh, what's happening now?
Okay, it looks like my side is frozen, but I'm not frozen on the social life.
Yeah, you're okay.
I am experiencing some technical issues. My side is frozen, but I'm not frozen.
Oh, you have a delay.
The social life.
Yeah, you're okay.
I'm experiencing some technical issues.
Well, that's what happens when we go live, folks.
Okay,
Sometimes
so
we have technical difficulties. There we go.
let's see. Mark, why don't we go on to the next question? A baker has a problem with white mold spots on bread before its expiry date. So could
Yes,
you
I saw that
explain a little
one.
bit more what the solution was there?
Yeah, it's good. There's been quite a few suggestions have been offered, including adding vinegar and things, and all of these things are generally sound ideas for helping to manage mold control. But one of the things, because this is happening before the normal expiry date, um, what we would really want to look into is root cause analysis, I guess, as they say. Why is this happening? And I've asked information from the poster as far as which country they're located in. That can really help us understand the environment. It can also help us locate a consultant who could help provide some more in-depth support. Um, when, as we often have talked about, when the bread comes out of the oven, it's completely sterile at that point. And so it becomes contaminated simply by the air around it. And any handling, if anything that touches it, any equipment, any person that touches it is going to contaminate it. Now, that's quite normal. It's not a bad thing. There is always some contamination that takes place. It's all about managing it. And so one of the key things, first of all, to look at with bread is what is the internal temperature of the bread when you package it? Because we want to make sure we measure the internal temperature, not how it feels on the outside, because if it's still really warm on the inside, that is going to cause it to evaporate into the bag and create moisture on the surface that gives the better opportunity to grow. So we want to make sure that we have our internal temperature 120 degrees or less, ideally below 100 if possible, before packaging, because otherwise that is just going to encourage mold growth, right? Because it creates condensation, quite frankly, is kind of what happens. Right? Oops, our microphone is muted, Lynn.
There you go. I knew something was wrong. We have
There you go.
We have a question from the live audience, Mark.
Oh, wow.
Satu asks, how can I prevent oxidation of my matcha cookie?
So oxidation refers to the fats starting to go rancid. That is when we use the term oxidation. So the thing with that is, while matcha tea is an antioxidant to help interrupt free radicals from making fats go rancid, so to speak, is there are other influences, of course. Light is very important. So choose a packaging that will allow the least amount of light to get through. Um, Oftentimes, you'll see these types of things packaged in what is called metallized foil. It's sort of shiny like metal on the inside, and it has a really good barrier. Oxygen is, of course, the other enemy, which will cause rancidity as well. The process of what is happening is that fats are made up of fatty acids, triglycerides, and these are long molecule chains. They're usually like most common fats, and most of the time are about 18 molecules, 18 carbon atoms. And so things like oxygen or light or other free radicals, metals, chelators, and so on, what they do is they interrupt that chain where there are weaker bonds, and they break off. And that breaking off of the chain is what creates that taste and aroma that is rancidity in that sense. It
Right.
To me, it's
So
always soapy, right? So
Satu has a comment. She said there's no matcha color and it just gets browner day by day. So absolutely, some kind of oxidation going on.
Oh, okay. So there may be milk in it, either milk or especially like if it's not a high heat milk powder, if it's like a skim milk powder that has
Yeah,
not
that's
been
right.
high heat treated,
Yeah.
then there's a lot that is often galactose. Galactose is one of the milk sugars that will brown just at room temperature over time. I actually ran into this with a fondant producer who was trying to make a white chocolate fondant, and it was because of the dairy portion in the white chocolate. It just reacts to light, and doesn't need any temperature, and it goes brown. It's almost like a Maillard reaction.
All right. She says there's no milk in the recipe.
No milk in the recipe,
Yes.
and it's going brown.
Butter, eggs, and sugar. So I say, Satu, please
Well,
come on.
butter has dairy. Butter
Yeah,
is got the milk in it. That's where it's
but
coming from.
usually butter doesn't react this way though.
Yeah.
But definitely come onto our baking industry professionals page on Facebook to ask this question because people really need to dig into your formula. Otherwise,
Yep.
if you want to keep everything a secret, you could buy a 30-minute consultation with us on Bakerpedia. So I'll, go
Yes.
ahead and seek the
Yeah.
resource there. Okay, I think we need to continue on, Mark.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. This is
Yeah,
great.
that was an exciting segue.
Yeah.
The next one I wanted to talk about was croissants getting gummy, or why do croissants have a gummy texture?
Well, sometimes this can happen if you're using a bread flour that is too high in protein. There's too much protein for this type of a processing. In the end, what it's doing or what it's causing is that the lamination is not correct, so that your layers are sticking together, so to speak. It might be that the dough is not being kept cool enough during the lamination process because the fat needs to remain very firm, not rock hard, but firm enough that it will expand, like that it will stretch out with the dough as you're laminating. And that also, then the other thing is, then even if everything is laminated right and you're using like a nice all-purpose flour, in some places, like here in Canada, all-purpose flour is pretty strong. So I actually have to lean it out with pastry flour to make it even weaker. Um, and the other thing then is proofing. If you're proofing at too high of a temperature to try and speed it up, all that happens is all the butter is going to melt out, and you're going to lose all of the lamination that you did, and you'll get a gummy, wet croissant on the inside. So it is a tricky artisanal product in that respect. It needs a nice, slow, long proof. It at around only 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and it can be an hour and a half to 2 hours for properly proofing a croissant.
Very good, very good. Let's talk about tunneling cakes next. So this person is trying to create a cake mix, and they're
Mhm.
getting a lot of tunnels. What's going on there?
Yeah, well, the first assumption was that, well, it's like a high ratio cake, with plastic shortening, or shortening is an oil that we call it plastic when it holds its shape, right? And their tunnels happen a lot if the shortening has lumps in it, and if cold liquids are added so that the lumps can't soften up. And then what happens is during the bake, those shortening lumps melt and drill holes through the cake, right? But in this case, there isn't any shortening in the mix. It is a dry mix with emulsifier and sugar and leavening system, and the end user adds eggs and vegetable oil and water, and whips it up. The most common cause we see in this type of case, especially looking at the pictures, the way there are some almost layers that are separated, is that it's too much aeration. So either it's being mixed too long, or there's too much emulsifier. They haven't mentioned what type of emulsifier they're using or what level, and I suspect they might be using PGMS, or too much PGME, or too much polysorbate 60, and those can really bung things up a little bit that way, because they're very, very effective. And they you will really aerate, not just aerate the dough, you'll put the batter, you'll put too much air pockets, and then these air pockets grow in the oven. And they're experiencing this worse in a deck oven, which is because they have that direct heat from the bottom, which is pushing the bubbles even more, right?
Right. That's great. That's great. Yeah. Um, One more question, Mark, before we leave.
Sure.
How do you make a chocolate muffin taste more chocolatey?
Well, that's a fun one. There's a number of tricks. One of the things to bear in mind is that chocolate, like think of, for example, dark chocolate. What makes dark chocolate taste chocolatey is how much the cocoa has been alkalized. That's also what changes the color. That's what makes it dark. So the lighter it is, the less alkalization, the more it will taste like cocoa powder. The darker, the more alkalized it is, the more chocolatey the flavor notes are. So cocoa processors and manufacturers make various different blends, all the way up to the black cocoa that makes things very black, but then that really doesn't have much chocolate flavor at all, right? It tastes just rather bitter. But usually a deep red brown, which is sort of a blend between the what some people call breakfast cocoa, more natural cocoa, and the alkalized cocoa. Um, then you can also use vanilla. If you add vanilla to cocoa or chocolate, and you'll often notice that dark chocolate has vanilla added to it in the ingredient listing, it actually lifts that chocolate flavor. It gives it a really nice, brings it to the foreground. A pinch of salt also helps go a long way with that as well. So those are the main tricks. The other thing then, if it's beyond that, you want more of a chocolate note, it's chocolate flavor. Then you go talk to a flavor house, and they can make natural, identical flavors that are using the chemicals that are in chocolate flavor, and they put them together, and it tastes just like chocolate, right?
Yeah.
And
My one last recommendation is try using really good quality chocolate too.
yeah,
That would work.
good quality chocolate. If you use good quality chocolate and replace some of the fat in your system by using melted chocolate, that
Mhm.
works really well too,
Yeah,
right?
that would be really delicious.
Yep.
Well, we have come towards the end of our questions on Forum Friday discussion, Mark.
Well, yeah, but there's some more things I wanted to bring up with you. Is that I've seen some posts from Bakerpedia, and there's some big news I saw with the American Society of Baking. Is
Yes.
that with their continued partnership, and what's happening there, Lynn?
So we are going to be donating our resource to the American Society of Baking. All 700 plus pages that are available right now to the public. We are going to donate it. so that in the future, if you need to access these pages, you have to be a ASB member. So that is huge because a lot of people use our resource now every day in their jobs. So
Yep.
in order to access it in the future, be an ASB member.
And that is really a small cost, a small price to pay. It's good for the baking industry, it's good for ASB, and it's also, of course, good for Bakerpedia. um, I
Absolutely.
could tell you, I mean, I've inquired with other associations, when you try to get access to some of their knowledge base, it's not included in the membership. You have to pay additional. And in today's subscription world, when you say additional, we're talking six, seven, 800, $1,000 or more per year to be
Mhm.
able to get access. And that is something that through the ESB membership, I think that is fantastic news to be able to have all of that access.
That's right, Mark. Yeah, we're really looking forward to that.
Super, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on today, Mark. And I'll see you on the forums, everyone.
Yep.
Happy Friday.
Well, happy Friday. See you all in the forums at the Baking Industry Professionals Group on Facebook and LinkedIn. Have a wonderful July weekend, the last weekend in July.
Yep. Bye.